Hey everybody, Dorian here. I just wanted to take this time to expand on the initial video that I made, which was about some of the learnings that I had from the 10X conference over the weekend. I do want to take a moment to just emphasize that these are all points that I've learned from hearing a lot of speakers during this conference. And the amazing thing, as I've come to realize in the last 2 days, is that a lot of these points are actually in common with what Brian has already shared with us. In other words, anybody who's achieved a certain level of success, they all think the same way. They all have the same learnings. They all share the same advice. So, I mean, like based on the number of commonalities here, I don't think that these are things that are, to be ignored. So I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. I also mentioned this in the last video, but I really feel like these are important points to share with everybody. They can really only add to your experience here. And because they're such powerful points, I thought it'd be a shame not to share them with you guys. So this is some value that I feel I can add to the group. And then of course I'm more than happy to get some feedback from you guys, and I won't be able to say everything that came up during that conference, but if you have any questions, please feel free to leave something in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you and answer any questions. So the first point that I wanted to bring up, which again is something that was stressed by pretty much everybody at the conference, is the idea that to be successful, you have to invest in yourself. I know this is something that, at first thought kind of seems like it's a very simple thing. And on the one hand it is, but when you hear it from people like Damon John, from people like John Maxwell, from Grant Cardone, from Grant Cardone's wife, Elena Cardone, and a bunch of other people during the conference, and of course Brian as well, that it's legit. Just to put this into perspective, Damon John, who's one of the people, he's one of the investors on Shark Tank. So he was saying that, like, look, he's been in business for like 20, 30 years, something like that. The guy's worth like, I don't know, like $300 million or something similar to that. He's saying that he does not have everything figured out. He's still in the place where he's learning, and it's a constant learning process. He's always going to be learning. He's got to surround himself with a team of advisors and people that are a lot more knowledgeable about him, who are constantly informing him, and it's a continual process. He also emphasized, though, that his biggest learnings happened when he was starting out in business. So he was saying that, like, in his early 20s he started making this, or maybe late 20s he started making this company. By the time he was around 30, somewhere in that range, he had made like $5 million or $20 million or something in his company. He founded a company called Fubu, which is I think a clothing brand. And a couple years later, he managed to lose a giant chunk of that through maybe a bad business deal. So he learned a lot of lessons when he was young. And despite all of those learnings and all the learnings that came in the decades afterward, he still doesn't have it all figured out. And that's just the way it goes. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't possibly be an expert in everything. But they emphasize that it's a must have. It's non-negotiable. You have to be learning constantly all the time. And one of the ways that you can be learning constantly all the time is by putting yourself in an environment, rather creating an environment around you that forces you to come outside of your comfort zone, like 95% of the time. You should almost never be in a place of comfort. You also need to be surrounding yourself with people who are more successful than you. Ty Lopez actually brings up an interesting point here. He has this like 30-30-30 rule, where he says that 30% of the time you're supposed to hang out with people that are not as successful or not as smart as you, because they make you feel better. 30% of the time you hang out with people who are at the same level as you, because they tend to be, more or less your peers. You're cool people to hang out with. And then 30% of the time you need to be hanging out with people who are, decades ahead of you and like 100 times more successful than you are. That's his perspective on things. Not everybody has that perspective. Other people are like, if you're not out of your comfort zone 100% of the time, then you're not learning and you're not growing and you're not achieving all that you can be. You know, so I think it's up to you, but overall the take-home message is you got to be in a place of discomfort. That's where growth comes from. It forces you to make decisions to improve yourself, and if you can't do that, well, you're probably not going to get everywhere. Again, these are lessons that are coming from very successful people. Some of the other things that I wanted to bring up on this topic of continual self-improvement is interesting because Grant Cardone was saying when you're young or when you're just kind of starting out, you shouldn't be saving your money. I know this is kind of a touchy subject because people are coming into this entrepreneurial thing at different stages in life, and you got different levels of responsibilities. I myself am kind of lucky on that front because I don't have any responsibilities really. I'm free to kind of make decisions as I need to make them, but if you got kids, if you got a house, you got a mortgage, you got investments and so on and so forth, you got a 401k, it might be a different story. But Grant was essentially saying that, like, look, you should be investing all of your money when you're younger. Don't save anything. Invest it all in yourself, in constant, continual improvement. Invest in yourself because you're the person, essentially, you're the thing that you're like the vessel. You're the thing that's actually carrying you forward in life. And if you can't invest in yourself and constantly learning new skills, learning new techniques, and in surrounding yourself with successful people, then you're never going to make any money. He was actually going, like, I think maybe like a little bit overboard, but like his words were very similar to invest more money than you actually have, borrow money from other people, and invest it in training sessions, invest it in getting yourself in putting yourself in positions where you can actually approach very smart, very successful people, and that's how you're going to improve yourself and build yourself. The other piece of this that really comes to mind is a lesson that I learned from John Maxwell. For those of you who don't know, and I didn't know before I went to this conference, John Maxwell is a leadership expert. He's the leadership expert, matter of fact. He's like, I think he's written like 80 books. He has, I think, the largest leadership consultancy company in the world. He's got like 20,000 leadership experts, something like that he sends out to coach other people on experts. He's taught some of the the top Fortune 500 execs and CEOs on leadership for like decades now. He's got 40 years of experience talking about this kind of stuff. So one of the things that he was saying, and funny enough, Brian was saying too, is you have to be creating value, constantly creating value for other people. If you're not creating value for other people, then you can't possibly expect to actually hang on to those relationships. You're not going to be an effective leader if you can't create value for other people. You're not going to be able to gain partnerships if you're not effective at creating value for other people. And that process of creating value for other people is something that's continuous. You don't just do it once and you're set. It has to be something where you're constantly reevaluating what you're offering to others. And you have to kind of jumpstart it in the same way as you would need to do for any personal relationship, right? I mean, like things they die down after a while. So if you're not constantly pushing yourself to recognize that you need to be creating new value for people all the time, then you're never going to keep or maintain a relationship, and that's going to fade off. So by improving yourself continuously and being aware that you need to create value for others, those are two of the key points that you need to keep in mind on this journey of building a successful company by building relationships with people. So that's pretty much it for now, and I'll tune in the next video. I hope this was really helpful. You guys, this is just some thoughts off the top of my head on messages that really were emphasized strongly by more than one person at the 10X conference. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.